come about following a very long process that NAPWA and members also took part in, the Royal Commission to Aged Care Quality and Safety, changes to the legislation, and then reforms to the aged care system as that accompany the legislative changes. So could we have the next slide, please, Jimmy? So NAPWA has been involved in the HIV and aging space for a number of years, and it's important, of course, for people with HIV to keep abreast of developments, because the median age of people living with HIV is now roughly 52 or 54. It's in that sort of mid-50s category. So that means that half of us are older than, say, 54. And there has been it's been interesting to hear people saying, not thinking about aged care. Of course, one doesn't think about it until much later, and statistics show anyway that it is from the age of 80. So people in the 80 plus category are the primary users of aged care services. So even if there's 20 years ahead for one, I'm 64, so let's say 16 years ahead, it's still valuable to kind of have a sense of what's going on. It's valuable when we're helping our parents and friends and so on, but also just we can get a sense of for ourselves what it might mean. So yes, I've finished this PowerPoint before the change, and as I was saying to Adrian and Brent, think about a policy system, and policy changes and legislation as like an ocean liner. It's very difficult to stop, and it's very difficult to turn around. And so we're experiencing that this very moment. So they've extended the changes until November. But anyway, sometime in this year, the changes are going to come into effect. Next slide, please. So let me just summarize what is new in the Act. And this also gives me the chance to talk about my methodology. So I'm a social policy, social work person, been involved in that for all of my working life. And so I look at it from purely what is the documentation saying about this policy change. So that's the one side of it. There's the sort of facts, if you like, and all the documentation is there referenced. And then what's important for this discussion, obviously, is how might this impact on us, on people living with HIV? And so as soon as you get into, how might it impact or how could it impact, then obviously I'm giving my sense based on, the mind of a social worker, the mind of someone who's worked in both the aged area and HIV area, so combining that, and just my own sense of self and so on. So that's where hopefully the discussion will come when I finished, which is people sort of saying, how might it impact on me? And we can have a good discussion about that. But okay, having given that sort of methodology thing, let's look at some of the key features of the new legislation. So it is explicitly identified as a rights-based act. So whereas the previous act, as one of you mentioned, the 1997 Act was very much focused on providers and sort of regulating providers, because that was the age of, privatization and outsourcing and so on. But now this new legislation is specifically seeking to empower and improve the lives of older people. So it shifts the focus from providers to service recipients. So we know that there is a demographic shift happening in Australia, and that is happening in all developed countries. So an increase in the numbers of the sheer numbers of people aged 65 and over, but also an increase in the proportion of people older than 65 compared to those of working age. And so all the policy changes and discussions around aged care should be considered in the context of what is going on, and all countries are dealing with it. So Australia, as always, takes very evidence-based kind of approaches to things, but it's also based in the sheer politics of it, that older people are going to become a even more influential demographic group within Australian society. So there was this extensive consultation process, as we know, and what has come out in the legislation and in the way that the programs are being described is that it's forward-looking. It's accepting that more and more people will be making demands on aged care services, and therefore the system needs to be able to address that demand. And in terms of the providers, as we know, the government provides the funding and the regulations and the policy settings, but provision is by a very wide range of providers, often very big conglomerates. So we're talking about big corporations as well. So and in more rural areas, you have more the sort of single local charity that has been doing this work for years. So there's a very wide range of providers, but there's a robust regulatory framework that is meant to apply to all of those providers, irrespective of their organizational status. And so there's that regulatory framework. And then from the provider's point of view, there's a very strong complaints process, and the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission is a very important part of the sort of armory, if you like, of Australian aged care, and that has a very strong role in enforcing standards. Next slide, please, Jimmy. And so just looking at some specifics, we have this very interesting new registered supporter. So the legislation provides space for someone to be nominated, the older person to nominate a registered supporter. And that could be a partner, it could be a friend, it could be a carer, it could be a peer, if you're getting peer support. But you would nominate this person to kind of officially be your registered supporter, who would advocate on your behalf, help you to make decisions, a whole range of things that for example, peer navigators and peer supporters do. Another change is that there has been for quite a few years something called a serious incident response scheme that applies to residential aged care. But now, because of the rapid increase and the dominance of home care provision, that scheme is being expanded to care delivered in a home or community setting. So for in other words, if there has been a case of sexual abuse or neglect or financial abuse or whatever, it gets registered and gets dealt with as a serious incident affecting aged care and affecting the health and well-being of an older person. Another thing that the Act is very clear about is that it sees a strong role for aged care workers in bringing the new Act to life. And that includes having an enforceable code of conduct for aged care, which is being, that is what providers will be assessed upon. Strengthen aged care quality standards and a statement of rights, which can be put on the wall of all aged care providers, hopefully. Next slide, please. Now, this is what's important to me about this. You can look at all those changes and I provide links in the papers. But let's look at what could this mean for us? So the first thing that comforts me is that obviously people with HIV are included in the strong focus on the rights of older Australians. So it doesn't say all older Australians except people with HIV. Okay, so we're included in that. And as service users, we can have greater confidence in the quality and safety of care because of these strengthened standards and the code of conduct. I think it would be very interesting to explore this new registered supporter role and see to what extent it might benefit us. It could be a peer support, it could be a partner. Anyways, it's something to think about. And then, of course, with the increased emphasis on the workforce, which is key to this work, NAPWA and its members certainly have a role in contributing to aged care worker professional development, and especially, I think, to increase understandings of what it is like to live with HIV now in the present and not in the 80s. Next slide, please. So just briefly, I want to look at what's new for carers and supporters. It's not so much something totally new as just a very strong recognition, because there's a statement of principles which accompanies the statement of rights in the legislation, and it very specifically acknowledges the important role of informal carers in aged care. There's a very strong possibility that the people that would be nominated as registered supporters are likely to be even the primary carers of older people. So there's that link there, and that will strengthen the carer role even further because it's undergirded by this legislation. Another thing that the Act is clear about is that older people are expected to determine have preferences. They are saying what care they want and how they see their lives, but they are enabled to be supported in making those decisions. And so this concept of supported decision making is also something to explore, and also recognize that if you are a carer, and remember, people with HIV can be receiving care, but many of us are also giving care, as we've just heard, with parents and with partners and so on. There is a nationwide program under the Carer Gateway with a whole range of free services, including counseling, online counseling. So then if we look at the next slide, what could this mean for us? Next slide, Jimmy. Thanks. So I think the first step, if I was working with any carer, would be to say, are you a carer? In other words, just acknowledging that this is a role that you have is 50% of getting there to getting support and care for yourself. There would be value in all of us exploring these roles, the registered supporter and what does supported decision-making mean, and to use available supports and services when needed. Don't be afraid. Thank you. The next slide there. So I just quickly want to look through some of the services. I already see that it's like 4:43. How am I going to? I'm going to have to rush through this. But just to summarize, the four big sort of parcels of aged care is in-home support and care, flexible aged care, residential respite care, and residential aged care. And by far, the majority of aged care service users make use of in-home support and care. So let's start with that on the next slide. How do you get in to aged care? So there is a single assessment system. The assessment providers, the providers themselves are different from the aged care providers. It's a whole industry out there. Those assessors make use of what's called the integrated assessment tool. You can look it up on the internet, so you can see exactly what you'll be asked. The assessment occurs in your home. And all you need before having that or booking an assessment is there's some sort of eligibility check through, for example, your Medicare status, just to show that who you are and your age and so on. So just on the next slide, I just kind of, once you've done the so the idea is that there's a single assessment, and from there you kind of get channeled into the different types of aged care, if aged care is at all indicated. And so if you going to go into home-based care, you start off with that single assessment, and then there are two options. It was interesting that one of you said, hopefully the CHSP will be united with the old home care packages program, but not yet. Not yet. The CHSP is this huge and very successful program, and that won't change this year. In fact, it'll be another 2 years at least before it gets molded into the new supported home program. The supported home program replaces the home care packages program. And by far, so we're talking about almost 900,000 aged care service users make use of the CHH Commonwealth Home Support Program, which provides entry-level care in the home. Next slide, please. Similarly, with residential care, therefore, you would go through the single assessment system, and then, if that is what is indicated, then you need to undergo a subsequent assessment called the Australian National Aged Care Classification, ACCC, which is there to work out what level of care you're going to need if you're going to be in a residence. And it has all kinds of categories. Obviously, your mobility, your mental functioning, other medical conditions, polypharmacy, all of that plays into the level of the intensity of care that you're going to need. And it is on the basis of those assessments that the government funds the residential aged care providers, because obviously some types of care are more expensive than others. There's a third kind of assessment that you might need if you're wanting support, financial support with any payment, then you need to undergo the aged care means assessment. Next slide, please. So clearly, and even just a little discussion we had before, it makes it clear it's not something that you just wake up one day and say, oh, well, I'm gonna ask for an assessment for aged care. There's a whole range of emotions that are associated with taking that step. And it's important to allow those emotions to play themselves out and talk with people and read and examine yourself. Are you happy to invite this, someone into your life? Because that's what aged care really means, is you're inviting people into your home, but at the same time, like, let's say you're 80, most people, as I've said before, access aged care when they're 80 and older. So let's say you're getting kind of there. Think of the assessment as an opportunity perhaps to open up new horizons for you, because you've kind of got into a rut. You're really struggling to deal with things, and the current support that you have isn't quite doing it. So maybe getting aged care help coming in is going to open up new horizons for you. That's a way to look at it. And ideally, and that is why a lot of the changes are focusing on this new supported home program, because that is where the bulk of aged care is going to take place. Ideally, you would be able to get a flexibly designed service that includes some allied health services, that includes some domestic care, that includes some sort of psychosocial support, like maybe getting transport assistance to go to a support group or something. So ideally, you can see it as something that can flexibly be tailored to meet your needs, because that is anyway what the rights-based aspect of the legislation is all about, is to meet your needs. And of course, another valuable thing is for peer navigators to become familiar with all of these aged care entries and assessment and the services that are available, so that you can help your peers when they feel ready to consider accessing aged care. Okay, next slide, please. You see, time. So I'm just going to rush through this very quickly, okay, people? I'll just see what I can. So with the CHSP, which it's 80% sure that you're gonna your first 90% sure that the first services you're going to receive are under the CHSP, and it includes things like allied health and domestic assistance. It includes respite so that carers can take a break. You are expected to contribute to the cost, but never asked to cover the full cost. And there are no exit or other fees. Okay, so it ends up like maybe 5 hours a week. And then maybe when you're 85, then it goes up to 10 hours a week or whatever. It's entry-level care. Someone comes in and helps with something, and most of the time you're handling things on your own. Right, the next slide, please, is going to be looking at support at home. Now, this is the new one. It was meant to start 1st of July, so it's going to be now November. But instead of 4 levels, the home care packages had 4 levels. There are now 8 levels, reflecting increasing amounts of support and associated funding. And there are 3 categories of services that are available. The clinical services, as one can accept, includes, for example, nursing care. And none of the clinical services that are defined as clinical, in other words, they are provided by a university-trained medical provider or accredited, none of those are charged. But then there are independent services, so things that will enable you, maybe you need to really get over that, you had an accident 10 years ago, and now it's really inhibiting your mobility, and so there's going to be maybe some help to help you deal with that very thing, which can help you increase your mobility and that you can be more independent at home. So there's services under that, and then everyday living, so shopping, cooking, cleaning, laundry, that sort of stuff. There are also, interestingly, 3 short-term care pathways within this new supported home package, including restorative care, end-of-life care, and then the various assistive technology and home care modifications which have been brought into the system after being separate for a while. Okay, the payment is affected by your age pension status. Are you a full pensioner, part pensioner? Do you have a Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare card? Yes or no? And if you've done the means assessment, what is your means? So those 3 factors impact on the cost. And just remember, clinical services are fully funded. Let's just look quickly at the next one, please, Jimmy. So for permanent residential care, there are these 3 types of costs. The first one is a basic daily fee. It's 85% of the aged care pension, just as a broad guide. And then there's a means-tested contribution to the cost of personal and clinical care. So if you're receiving podiatry, dietitian, whatever, audiology, heart, cancer care, whatever, you might be asked to contribute to the cost of that. And then, of course, there's the price for the roof over your head, including a refundable deposit. But all of those are means tested, and if you can't afford it, the system won't kick you out. That's the theory. Okay, then finally, the next slide. So that's what I'm saying there. The aged care system is designed to cater for service users, whatever their financial means. Detailed lists are available of these services, especially support at home. It's interesting to check it out. You know, what sort of things can I ask for? Yeah. And remember that if you are, let's say you're 78, you're living alone in your own home, but you're handling it, you're getting aged care services coming in, that isn't the end of it. There's a whole range of other community-based services and HIV focused services as well that can help you to live full lives in the community, because that is the whole goal of the system, is to enable older people to live full, healthy lives, and certainly not to think about moving into residential care. That is a last resort, and it's going to become even more and more of a last resort. Some localities obviously are better resourced than others, but those of us living in rural areas know that very well. But we can find something, including online support. And NAPWA's directory of services is one of the resources. We try and keep it up to date with services that are useful for older people with HIV. Thank you very much for listening.